your girl Aisha, and I'm back with another video. If it's your first time joining my channel, welcome, and if you've been rocking with me, welcome back. I am coming to you with another Nadula sponsored video. I said on my initial review of the hair slash my unboxing video that I will be creating a wig out of this unit. I will be creating a wig using that hair in the closure, and this is the finished product. I just want to give like my my updated review, how the bleaching of the knots and stuff went, the actual thickness of the bundles. So this wig, I used all 3 bundles and of course the closure. What I will say is that I would have preferred to have 4 bundles because I did have to make those 3 bundles stretch. But as you can see, like, the hair still looks, you know, extremely full. It's nice, it's flowy, I love it. Like, I literally love it. And next time I probably would recommend, if you're not a fan of like your part only being about this long, I would recommend a 5x5 or a 6x6 closure. But yeah, I love it. This is going to be my video where I show y'all how I made this wig. So just stay tuned for that because we are gonna get into that right now. So to begin prepping our closure, you're gonna need aluminum foil, developer, hair bleach, brushes of your choice, and of course your closure. And so what I'm doing here is I'm just gonna mix the hair bleach by pouring it into this bowl with my 30 volume developer, and I'm gonna stir it to be a thick consistency and apply that all over my lace to bleach the knots. And during this process, you want to be extra careful so that your bleach doesn't seep through your knots and get on the roots of your closure. And then I'm just going to let this process for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to rinse it out and wash it out and all that good stuff. So you want to make sure you get all of that bleach out of your closure. And then you can just literally go in with your shampoo of choice. I'm a big fan of organics. So that's what I'm doing here, and this closure, it did bleach very well. I actually over bleached it a bit, which is an easy fix, but as you can see, there was very minimal shedding, which is something that I was very satisfied with. Then as you've rinsed your closure out as much as you can, I like to just check to see how I did by comparing it up against my skin, and then I just go in with a towel to towel dry it. And now we are going to get started on our wig. So I'm going to be using these T-pins to secure my spandex dome cap on my mannequin head. It's just easier to pin down your cap to ensure that your cap isn't sliding and shifting as you're sewing down your wefts. So we're going to first start by going in with our closure, and what I like to do is bring down the lace, the front line, the hairline of the lace, all the way down to the edge of the cap and pin it down using those T-pins once again to just give me a strong foundation. And then I like to pull it all the way as far back as I can to ensure that my closure is not bulky and that it lays as flat as possible. You also want to secure this down with T-pins on all 4 corners. And then you can just get started by just braiding it or clipping the closure out of the way, whichever is your preferred method. I like to just plait it down to keep it out of my way, and it's something that I don't have to worry about coming loose as I'm going through the process of constructing my wig. Now I've already threaded my needle, and then so I like to do it probably about 2 arms lengths in distance. And you're going to take that needle through the cap and through the closure so that you can start off by securing your foundational knot, I like to call it. This is where I like to go all the way through instead of just threading it through the top of the cap, so I can just have a good starting point and have a strong base for sewing my closure onto the cap. Then, as this is our first knot, I want to go through it twice. You'll want to go through it twice just to make sure everything is secure before you start just going through as normal. And by normal, I mean just the simple method of loop sewing. I don't know how to really explain it or describe it, but literally just looping through the cap in the weft, or the cap in the closure, or the cap in the frontal, as you can see I'm doing here. It's so simple, it's quick. And now I've completed the rest of this closure all the way around, and we are going to get started with installing our first bundle, which I like to pin down. And you want to go from ear to ear when you're starting, just to kind of give you a guideline of how you want to lay your wefts. And I think having the T-pins is so much easier than letting the track hang as you're trying to sew. It keeps everything just seamless. And so now I'm just starting off with that double knot for the base of the wefts before I get started in the loop method that I just described to you while sewing down the closure. And I didn't mention this, but I'm sure you guys noticed I do have my wefts doubled in the beginning before I started to do the single method, just because I like that thickness and I want to be sure that I can fit all of the bundles onto the wig. And I know that single layering, you can kind of end up with excess hair left over, and I want my wig to be as full as possible. And so from here you can just go through by doing the flip over method instead of cutting each tracks, and this will actually help with shedding and things. Like, the less you cut your tracks, like, the better it's going to be. So I just go through the flip over method back and forth until I get to the middle of the wig. Also remember that once you've reached the last piece, the last edge of a track, you're also going to want to hit that double knot again as if you just started the track, just to make sure you have a secure beginning and end if you're going to do the flip over method, or if you're going to cut the track off at that point to start a new row. Now I'm just going in with that next bundle, and literally you're just going to repeat the same process, the same steps as I've described and shown you before. I typically like to do one finger width apart for my tracks, and then if I do have 4 bundles or more, I like to join them very close together, so you don't really have to adhere to that step if you're only working with like 3 bundles. Now you're ready to install your last bundle. Just by eyeballing the space that's left, you can kind of judge if you've spaced your tracks out correctly. And for this part, this is just something that I personally do. I like to actually lay a track with a big gap through the middle, so I know how much I need to fill in, which is what I'm showing you here. And then from this point is where I'll be laying single tracks and literally cutting from edge to edge. And the reason I do this is so that I can have the same amount of distance all the way across from edge to edge of the cap. I want the same width apart, so this is why I do this method, and I just kind of fill in the gap with single layered tracks. Now, as you can see, our gap has gotten much smaller, and this is your personal preference at this point. I'm gonna go ahead and flip over this track to complete the space that we created, and now you're gonna start sewing from edge to edge of the cap, which is slightly different from how we've been doing it. But this is because now we're nearing the top and it's safe to go from edge to edge, because now we've created the same width distance from ear to ear around our closure. here is what your wig should be looking like at this point. There's only room for one more track, and for this you're gonna want to go through the cap, through the weft, and through the closure. Cannot stress that enough. This is to bind everything together, and you want to start off with a secure foundational knot when you're doing this. This is bringing everything together. This is basically completing your wig. So I'm just going to complete this step and go all the way around the closure by completing the same stitching method. Now once you've cut off the excess track and doubled your knot, it is time for the fun part. Get working on this closure. This is fun, but this is a very tedious process, and first you're going to want to cut the inside of the cap off. Be sure to not cut any of your stitching. You need to be very careful in this process, but you're going to cut that excess cap out and then put your wig back onto your mannequin head so you can start tackling the closure and the plucking and the customization process. So for me, I knew that with this unit I wanted a side part, and this is actually my first time trying out baby hairs. Typically with my wigs I don't do baby hairs at all, just because of how my natural hairline lays, but I wanted to try something different with this unit. I thought it would be really pretty, so now I'm just plucking away and combing out the hair that comes from all that plucking. You want to be sure to use your favorite foam, your wrap mousse, as it's gonna make styling your closure so much easier, as well as your baby hairs. Helps define your part, and that's what I am doing here. Just trying to perfect my part. I wanted a slight curve, and I wanted to have that lifted look instead of just having my part and my closure very flat. So now I'm just going in, I'm cutting it to my liking, and you can kind of play around with this step because everybody is different. Everybody has different preferences when it comes to their baby hairs. And so I'm using my two-edged styling brush, my edge brush, just to kind of play around with my baby hair customization. Now with this step, I'm just going to tie it up for a few minutes just so the mousse can dry. And as you can see, it got kind of messed up, which is an easy fix. I just put a little bit more mousse on there. And now I'm going to spray the hair all over just to kind of get the curls more defined and cohesive with one another. As you can see, my closure was pretty dry, so I'm just trying to get the same curl pattern going through the whole entire wig. And now your unit is finished. I love the way this turned out, and this is the hair in its natural state. Thanks for watching, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.